I will say that sunny Saturday afternoons don't necessarily seem like the spookiest time, or most apt time, to discuss ghost hunting. But when the sun goes down much later on tonight, visitors will be heading to a historic North Essex location to try and connect with the supernatural. It's all going to be happening at Redoubt Fort in Harwich. David Clark is from the company running that, Ghost Hunt Events, and he has very kindly come to see us at BBC Essex to tell us all about it. Good afternoon, David.
Good afternoon, Jodie.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you kindly, yes.
Good.
Absolutely.
Well, it's lovely to see you. Thank you so much for coming in.
Pleasure.
I suppose the first thing to say is we will talk about the event itself and Redoubt Fort, but tell us, what do we need to know about Ghost Hunt Events? You work for the company, it's not your company, is it?
It's not, no. Now, the actual founder is Steve Moyle, who is the founder of the company from 2010, and he's based in Kent, but basically for every Friday and Saturday during the summer and during a busy time of the year, which will be Halloween, that they have an event, and they will have events up and down the country, and tonight we are at Harwich at the Redoubt Fort.
Ooh, it's going to be good. I don't have a great deal of knowledge of the Redoubt Fort. I've think I've stood in the gate and looked at it. I've not done a full tour of it.
Yes.
But Harwich is imbued with all of this history and heritage, isn't it?
Definitely.
So Redoubt Fort will be a great example of that. Tell me, David, what your connection is to all of this, because you'll be going along tonight.
I will be.
How long have you been involved with this whole operation?
So I've been with Steve, and I started off as a guest, and I went along to one of his great events at the Red Lion in Colchester. And if people haven't been and stayed at the Red Lion, you know that when you do go there, that you walk away, there's something there. There's something maybe not spooky, but there's some paranormal events that have happened there. I was a guest and was kind enough to ask the right questions. Apparently, when I did speak to Stevie, I remember you asked the right questions. And for the paranormal team at the time, they were after staff, and I've been a part of the paranormal team since.
And you're an Essex boy as well, so you know the area and you know the history. I always think with Essex, I know lots of counties have got interesting bits of history, but we've got witch connections and maritime connections all of these little pockets, haven't we, spread through the county that people might not necessarily know that much about. Maybe if you live in Manningtree, you'll know, you know, witch trials, or Hatfield Peveril, where, you know, a lot of women were taken to the, you know, the assizes and all those kinds of places. But it's very good, I think, isn't it, to shine a light on such things. Now, the Redoubt Fort, for people who haven't been or don't know a lot about it, like my good self, what do we need to know? What is it? Is it Napoleonic?
It is. It was actually built from 1808 to 1810, and was actually partially built by French prisoners from the Napoleonic era. And it went basically all the way through as one of three forts, which are very similar in design. When you go to Harwich and the Redoubt Fort, it's a circular fort, which when it was on a hill at that time, it's slightly different now with the makeup of Harwich, but they could see and guard Harwich for the fort straight out to sea, but also all around them as well. So they had a good strategic point there. And there's one of three within the UK. So.
Oh, really? I was unaware. There were two other ones, presumably nowhere near as good as Harwich.
No, it's been restored brilliantly by the guys who look after it there, and there is actually a anti-aircraft gun that they've put together from scratch, and a couple of other things which they do, because we talked about beer festivals earlier. They do hold one there, but they also have reenactments and other things there as well, which is good.
Yeah,
as well as ourselves being allowed to go and look at the paranormal side.
Yeah, they're allowing it to sort of live, aren't
Absolutely,
they?
indeed,
and keeping it going in that way. Now, the fact that it was built by French prisoners of war, is that the sort of thing that you do get a bit of a sense of when we're on the ghost tour, or do we end up talking about these French prisoners? Because presumably it was all, you know, under duress, like prisoners who forced to build anything.
Indeed, and certainly the idea behind it is the feel of it is certainly a Napoleonic era when you actually go round to the site itself. But it was actually used as well a little bit in the Second World War. There were actually prisoners kept there, and there is famously an actual soldier who died there and where they actually died and the way they died. I won't go into it too much, but his ghost is apparently seen around the property. And that was in 1972.
Oh wow! So, okay, yes. So quite recent,
it was,
really. Very much, very much in living memory for lots of us.
Yes.
Okay, well, we'll come back to you shortly. We'll have another little bit of music, and then we will hear more about what you can expect if you are tempted to get yourself on one of these tours, and some of the things that David has encountered over the years. Lisa, now before our last piece of music, we were in conversation with David Clark. He is from a company called Ghost Hunt Events. Tonight, they will be running a tour of the Redoubt Fort in Harwich, a Napoleonic structure built with the help, or I say help, with the skills and labour of some French prisoners of war. It was all constructed between 1808 and 1810. If you live in Harwich or the North Essex area, you will be aware of the fort and its historic connections. Well, tonight, a quite small group of people will be going there to explore some of the supernatural connections as well. And David can tell us more about that. Now, David, what can people expect? Say I was coming on the tour tonight. What exactly would happen when I got there?
Yes, so when we arrive at the venue, we kind of tell you a little bit about the history, but ideally we'd like you as guests to come and investigate the actual property itself. Now, what we would do is put you into small groups, and tonight we have, say, 15 guests, so we would put you into a couple of small groups and allow you and give you some equipment with our volunteers that we have, and ideally go out and either do table tipping and spirit boards, and then the other team will do what we call tech, and the tech that we have are handheld devices which are used to detect electromagnetic frequencies, and they can be what they call a K2 meter, and also we have dictaphones, and we have SLS cameras as well, which are similar to if the kids have got their Xboxes and the cameras on the top. It's that with a tablet, and that looks at what we call picking up spirits that come through and look like stickmen, but we do get answers from that. If they come through, we ask them to do different things, and basically using the tech, we look to find out what's actually there. And sometimes we actually get ghosts that are representative of the fort, and other times we have spirits come through with certain messages on occasion.
I was going to ask you, what sort of activities have you personally witnessed, or you've heard being witnessed at that Redoubt Fort?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, certainly at Redoubt Fort, we've had lots of different. The last time I was there, we hadn't even started, and Thomas and his father, who was volunteers with us, we were literally had just out where they have a little parade ground. We just had the door open, and we heard people talking, and there was no one there. Everyone else was away, and I always look to be scientific about it and kind of look at what it's not or what it can be to rule out what it is. But we clearly heard people talking amongst themselves and whispering amongst themselves, and it wasn't us. There was no one else there to do that. So we've had that. We've also had shadow figures and other basically anomalies that we couldn't make scientific sense of, as it were. So
I think it's really interesting that you've said that, because with all due respect, there will be people listening to this who are rolling their eyes, hearing what you're saying and thinking, nah, ghosts don't exist. Supernatural world doesn't exist.
Absolutely.
And I know you know that, and that's why I think it's interesting that you've talked about the science. What is it not? What could it be?
Absolutely,
and that kind of thing.
Yes.
What is your response when people say, nah, it's a load of cobblers?
Absolutely, and I agree with what that is and what we look to do. And I personally, being what they class as an objective skeptic, so always try and look at what it, as we touched on, as far as, okay, that could be the wind, or that could be the staff upstairs talking. Was that them? But when we then tried the same experiment, ideally again, there was no voices coming from down there, or there was where we've had light anomalies and other things like this. So there are things like that, and the paranormal side of it does get down to sometimes you get other explanations to it that can be wind or can be dust, which springs up orbs and things like this. But when we got evidence of people talking and things like that, we couldn't explain what it was. And other people have seen figures walking around, which again we've accounted for all the guests. We don't know exactly what it is, but scientifically, yes, there is still an understanding that we try and work out exactly what it is, and if we're using the devices that we've got there, we can actually get some physical evidence. And even we ask our guests, just take your cameras around with you, take photographs, talk out, try and reach out and ask if there's something there. And surprising, even people just using their normal phone rather than, say, our devices, we've had very good EVP. We've had really good evidence. The evidence on the website that I know we was talking about a bit later, maybe, the evidence is actually listed by the actual sites that we visit, and then you've got excellent evidence on there as well, so which is good.
Have you seen sort of an uptick in popularity since the explosion in this sort of television programme covering this sort of supernatural thing? Because there's so many shows, isn't there, that sort of touch on this or go to different places. I don't know if you've ever been to Redoubt Fort, but
no, absolutely.
That you see a lot of this on telly. People must see that and think, oh, I'd like to give that a go, and then come along.
And that's kind of what spurred my interest a little bit. I'd lucky enough have been to Stratford-on-Avon for an official ghost hunt, and was away with my wife at the time for a nice romantic weekend. But in the end, I dragged her along, unfortunately, to a ghost event, which absolutely. But bless her, we saw stuff again we couldn't explain. We had lots of noises and effects that we couldn't make head nor tail of, and that kind of spurred our interest. But yes, the TV shows where you've got, if I can mention a couple that,
of course,
that ideally where and Steve, who's the owner, Ghost Adventures is one of the bigger ones. Ghost Hunters was one of the original shows where they were just plumbers and they were then called out to do that. But with Ghost Adventures, when they visited the UK, they actually used ghost hunt events as their part of their team for the UK. So they actually asked them to come along to Fort Horsted in Kent. I know it's a different county, but they used them for an event and actually investigated with them, and you can see that on their shows and things.
And there are a few different places that you do go in Essex.
Indeed.
We're focusing on Harwich now because it's tonight, but there's a few other ones as well.
We do also in Harwich. We use Beacon Hill Fort, and that's just on the coast, and that's very lovely because it's very Scooby-Doo. With them, one of the most Scooby-Doo ones we do, being serious. But the idea behind it is there's no power there, so it's literally pitch black. As soon as darkness hits, you're then using your wits and all your senses to do that. But we also cover Charlton House in London, which is a very good Jacobean house. Lots of history, also used during the First and Second World Wars as a hospital. So we've got lots of different evidence there, and a very creepy basement. And then the Red Lion in Colchester, which I touched on earlier today, and that's what kind of allowed me to come within the team. But when you go into the cellar there, even some of the staff, Paul Peter, who's one of the night porters there, he doesn't like going down on his own. And usually when we go back there, we say, oh, you won't believe what's happened. But there's also when we have guests who come with us to that night, that ideally they have lots of different experiences. But no, we do Fort Burgoyne. There's lots of other sites all the way, and Oxford Castle as well. There's lots of other sites all around the UK that Magram Castle in Wales as well. But we've got a very special HMS Warrior in Portsmouth this Halloween coming up, because Halloween is kind of our Christmas as far as paranormal investigators is concerned. So we're at the HMS Warrior on the Saturday. We are at Charlton House on the Friday of Halloween, and then actually on Halloween we're at the Red Lion, and we're going to investigate the Red Lion on Halloween.
Ooh,
yes, so
the spookiest of all
good,
the nights.
Absolutely. Yes.
You mentioned a website before.
Yes,
is that somewhere
indeed.
people can kind of log what they see, or
Absolutely.
have a look at what other people have seen?
Yes. Now we have a very good YouTube page, and for the Ghost Hunt Events YouTube page, which we recommend to go to see. But ghosthunteevents.co.uk is the main page. If you go to mobile devices, and also the main internet page, this gives you all the links of where you can visit, all the links of our evidence, and also some reviews from our guests as well. And that's also a great. We ask our guests to give us ultimate feedback, good or bad, ultimately, to let us know how they feel and how we can improve as an investigation team as well. And that really does well. So
tonight it's all kicking off at 8 o'clock.
Indeed, yes.
Goes on till about 2 o'clock in the morning.
It does. Now they do have a VIP section as well that you could pay for a VIP. Basically of, say, an event like Redoubt, and then we take you around the actual site before other guests turn up, and then allow you to just have a little look around the venues, see what you feel, and we tell you a little bit about the history of it as well. So we have that as well. But yes, we'll be going ideally 8 till 2 o'clock. But the great thing we do, where we have the small group of guests every night, what we look to do as well with that is let you go out and investigate yourselves. So we will take you around and hold your hand a little bit and make sure everyone's okay, and then talk you through how to do a spirit board session, how to do a table tipping session, and how to use the equipment, then you can go and explore yourself. You have that last couple of hours or so to do that. So.
And there is a little bit of availability.
Absolutely.
In case anyone is listening right now and thinks, all right, Harwich,
definitely.
Tonight.
Yes. If you're interested, where Jodie was kind enough to reach out to the team and Steve, we've made 2 tickets available tonight at the Redoubt in Harwich, and you can go to ghosthuntevents.co.uk, and there are 2 tickets available for tonight.
Okay.
As we were very lucky enough to be asked to go on summer events in Essex, what's going on, to come down and enjoy the night, as it were.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, David, for coming in. It's been a real pleasure to meet you, and you speak with such passion about it. And I think whatever line of work it is or whatever we're talking about, passion is key, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And that's what's going to engage your people who are coming as well.
Definitely. Now, we are volunteers, so the idea behind it, if you find something you love, and if you can get paid for it, all the better. But it's something like this that intrigues us, and there's always the unknown. So people are sometimes very scared, sometimes and sceptical. Absolutely fine. Come along and see what we can find, and we'll do it together.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
No
David
worries.
Clark from Ghost Hunt Events. Have a look at their website if you want to check out what's going on tonight.